Man, Hornet Sting is one of the most hyped and anticipated updates in a while. Gaijin even teasered this update kind of with their 2025 decal, where it's got the F-18 and the Su-30 in the background. And US mains have been wanting the F-18 for years now, basically ever since the F-16 dropped. And the Red 4 mains, specifically Russians, have been wanting the Su-30 for a while too. Really just any flanker that can make up for the Su-27 SM's lack of a decent radar, right? Something that can compete with the radars that US and Blue 4 has had for the past couple of years. Essentially, to get the Su-27 SM's radar to be competitive, Op4 mains have had to run around with your radar essentially just in HMD PD, using your head-mounted display and your head-mounted sight to acquire targets, right? Maybe turn it on for a second or two in TWS to get the quick IFF and ensure, the guy in front of you is an enemy. But once you get that, it's HMS PD from then on out. Their radar is just not competitive in that aspect. It took a couple updates for us to even get an Su-27 with a competitive flight model as well, with the most recent changes to that. And I'll admit, I'm a little late to the Su-27 game. I didn't really start playing the Su-27s, specifically the SM, until probably 6 months ago, right? But it doesn't take very long to realize just how much that radar holds back the Su-27 SM. But with this update, we got probably the most slept on plane to date. The J11B is everything that the Su-27 SM should have been a year ago. A flanker with a competitive flight model, a radar that is on par with the Blue 4 counterparts, right? The F-15 and the F-16. In fact, this radar is kind of a mix match of different radars. It's got the scope scales of an F-15E, and it's got the ACM, the frontal ACM mode of the Su-27 SM. So you can kind of tell that this radar is probably not even finished yet, just based on the fact that it's kind of a combination of a bunch of stuff right now. But the J11B just does everything well enough. It's not some crazy overpowered plane that is an absolute monster in like a 1 or a 2 circle. Like the flankers are great in specifically like 2 circle fights, but it's not like the Rafale, right? It's not just this AOA monster with 50G thrust vectoring missiles, right? That's like almost like a trump card. It's not a Eurofighter that can almost fly uncontested at contrail height and can just BVR essentially every single plane out there better, other than like maybe the F-15E. This plane does like everything, every aspect of a plane in War Thunder. Its BVR capabilities, its thrust to weight, its 1 circle and 2 circle performance, its missile load, all of this stuff, its countermeasures. It's like a 7 or an 8 out of 10, right? In every field. There's no field where it's like a 10 out of 10 or like the Rafale that's like an 11 out of 10 out of anything, you know what I mean? It does everything just well enough, and that is what I love about this plane. It's balanced beyond belief right now. And I kind of want to break this down a little bit because I think this deserves like a lot of discussion here. We can use this plane more or less as kind of like, you know what I mean, like a test bed for like what we should expect out of planes in War Thunder. So first things first, let's go over its missiles, right? The PL-12s aren't anything new. They're a really good balance between, let's say, like an R-77, not the Dash 1, just the basic R-77, and an AIM-120, right? It's somewhere in between. It doesn't have the range of an AIM-120. It doesn't pull as hard as the R-77, but it still has more range than the R-77, and it pulls harder than the AIM-120. So it's kind of a perfect middle ground for really any plane. You can still kind of BVR with it, and you can still dogfight with it. And it just kind of fits perfectly with this plane's flight model as well. Anybody that's flown the Su-27, specifically with R-77s, knows how good a dogfight missile is in the hands of a player flying a flanker. Its IR missiles are kind of where the plane quote unquote lacks. If I had to pick one thing that I maybe don't like out of this plane, it's the PL8Bs. And I understand there's a lot of people that like them. I mean, they're good enough. Again, that's kind of the theme of this plane, right? Good enough. But when you compare them to the other IRCCM missiles, they kind of lack in just about every aspect, right? They're essentially a Python 3 with IRCCM, right? So they're not going to pull as hard off the rails as like a Magic 2 or an R73. And you don't have the advantage compared to an AIM-9M with its, really advanced tracking suspension, IRCCM, and its smokeless motor. Same thing with the AAM-3, right? So when you compare it to all these missiles, like, it doesn't really do as well as they do. It's good enough in certain situations, but it just kind of lacks, especially if you're coming from the Su-27SM, right? You have the R-73s and you have the R-27 ETs. You have a great dogfight missile, and you have an incredibly good, sneaky, long-range R-27 ET, right? So you're going to basically miss out a lot when you're coming from the Su-27SM to this plane in the IR department. This probably wouldn't be such a big deal if you weren't forced to take 4 PL8Bs. So the outer 2 wingtip pylons are essentially, they're locked into the PL8Bs. You can't take PL12s on them. If you could replace the second to last outer wing pylons with PL12s, I probably wouldn't be such a negative Nancy on the PL8Bs. But again, right, you get 6 PL12s and you get 4 PL8Bs. So that's kind of your primo air-to-air loadout. And it's good enough, right? You still get a lot of missiles compared to other planes, right? You're not some crazy loadout where you're rocking 12 to 14 missiles like the Su-27SM and the Su-30. But you have enough missiles to compete with planes like the Rafale and the Eurofighter and even the F-15E, They have a decent amount of missiles as well, and you can kind of match them in that area. The tech suite on this plane is also pretty good compared to others. It gets IRST. It gets a really bad IRST compared to all the other planes. It's like 15 degrees left and right. That's really it. And then 15 degrees up and down. So it's really restricting as far as like off-bore IRST stuff. But its radar absolutely makes up for the lack of a decent IRST. And again, I mean, it's an IRST, right? There's planes that just don't have that. So it's better to have it than not have it, even if it's not the best. But the best thing that this thing offers as far as tech has got to be its MAW. Its range is around 25 to 30 kilometers. So you're going to get missile launch warnings from your MAW well before you get the MSL marker on your RWR from a missile going to pit bullets, which is around 16 kilometers. So your MAW is going to give you a much more advanced warning system than your RWR, and it helps a lot when you're notching as well, because it's so accurate that when you've notched the missile successfully and that missile is no longer tracking your plane specifically, you won't get that missile symbol anymore. You'll get the MSL, right? But you won't get that missile symbol on the outer edge of your RWR. So when you see that go away, you basically know for a fact, okay, you beat the missile, and you can essentially recommit from then on. So for those that are familiar with the vertical notch way of defeating radar missiles, this is a huge advantage that you can essentially just, once you've beaten the missile, the plane tells you, and you can just immediately go back on the offensive. I kind of already touched its radar. Compared to the Su-27SM, it's night and day. The Su-27SM's radar is really not even in the same argument as really any radar at this BR, but specifically compared to the J11B. Again, it's kind of a copy of the F-15E. So if you've flown that plane, you know how good this radar is. And again, it's just good enough. It's not an AZA, it's not a PESA, right? But it's just good enough to really make this plane shine with its missiles, especially in like the BVR. Its flight model is great. I mean, pilot to pilot, there's plenty of planes out there that you're gonna just kind of lose to. Like the Rafale and the Eurofighter are still very, very great. The Gripen is still incredibly good. The F-15A, 16A, I mean, they're all very, very good and probably arguably better than this plane in the flight model department. But again, like, That's pilot to pilot, so skill to skill. This plane is just good enough. It is a flanker, so it is a little more technical compared to the other planes. You can really get this thing into some dangerous situations, you know, if you just pull on the stick and you hold S. So there is an inherent kind of skill ceiling with really any flanker as far as getting its flight model to really work to your advantage. But that's not to say it's bad by any means. It's incredibly good when you get the hang of it. Essentially everything about this plane, like I said before, is just good enough to where you need that small amount of extra technical know-how as far as flying and utilizing your systems to your advantage, but it's not so insanely overpowered to where you can just fly around uncontested or just hold the S and win, you know what I mean? Like you still kind of need to think about things and think a couple steps ahead and know what you're, going to be fighting, so you can kind of tailor the fight to that specific plane that you're going to be going against. This plane just feels so balanced to me, and it baffles me that it took this long to get a flanker that was like even to the majority of the other planes on a release, like on release day, on patch day, you know what I mean? How long did it take the SU-27 SM to get competitive, really? And even still, its radar is just hot dog water. It's horrible. Planes like the Gripen and the 16C and even the F-15C were just so dominant for so long compared to the flanker, right? And just about every single aspect. Like this, okay, the 15C has never had like a phenomenally good flight model compared to really any flanker that I'm aware of at any point in time. Like it's always been okay, right? But its radar and its missile kit is just so much better and always has been. Now, obviously, AIM-120's 9Ms, I know they're not good in the dogfight, okay, I get it. But when you compare the plane to how it's supposed to fly, right? It's a high altitude air superiority fighter with a phenomenally good radar and really good BVR missiles. So it is just really, when it was released, was almost uncontested in the contrails compared to the MiG-29 SMT and the flanker, you know what I mean, the SU-27 SM on release. The whole point of this is to kind of compare other planes to on release, right? This thing is just so good at everything, but not incredibly overpowered. It's perfect. It's perfect. And right here is a pretty good example of showcasing how good these PL-12s can be. So I merge with this F-16, he misses his gunshots, and look at this off-bore. It instantly pulls in. It's kind of a head-on, but still, like an AIM-120 would have struggled to make that hit. R-77 would have every single day of the week, but they're just good enough, right? And here's another fight to really kind of show off this thing's flight model. So there's a Gripen in front of me. I'm really out of position, and so I'm just going to commit to the multipath. I'm going to launch on him to force him down as well. And we're just going to both stay low. I'm going to start pre-flaring, and I'm just going to get ready for the merge. So I'm going to cut my speed a little bit, start pre-flaring his inevitable 9M. We merge. Remember, this is a Gripen, so this is a pretty competitive plane in a dogfight. And I know that this thing is still pretty good in the 2-circle, maybe not as good as the Gripen, but we're playing on Afghanistan, so I have, like the higher altitude fight advantage. The engines on this thing really help it a lot on these high altitude maps. So I kind of realize here that he's really slow already. I bleed a little bit too much speed here. I probably should have just kept my speed up. AIM-120 is never going to hit there, right? I mean, maybe an R-73, maybe an R-77. But again, I'm a little slow, but I've got that engine advantage over him, and he's also very slow, so I'm just gonna take the slow speed 2-circle here, and I'm just gonna wait for my opportunity. And it's right about here, and I get guns on, and that's really it. Pretty simple, right? He was way slower than he needed to be. He kind of killed his speed right off the bat, but I was able to capitalize that with this plane, and immediately he's crashed and I get another J39 behind me, so I know it's another guy, right? So immediately into the next fight, and he starts launching on somebody else, and I'm out of flares, so I'm just hoping he's not going to 9M me, and he gets a shot right there, but he's going to continue and not really take the fight. And I get a rear aspect shot, he doesn't notch it, and that's all she wrote. Both of these guys made some pretty blaring mistakes, so I mean, it's probably not the best example, but I'm just kind of showcasing the fact that like you can still comfortably fight people in this plane. Like if they make a mistake, you're very easy to capitalize on it, and you're really not going to get yourself in that bad of a situation. Here I kind of want to touch on the Maz. So I know this guy's launching on me, but I'm not getting that Maz missile warning on the outer edge, so I know that these missiles probably aren't actually tracking me. So I'm going to immediately commit to a front aspect, okay? I'm going to get down just so I can kind of hide in these hills and try and bait him in a little bit closer so I can, you know, get the head-on, hopefully PL-12 shot on him. I'm going to start looking behind me and seeing if I can spot him. I know he's going to pop over that ridge, so I start bleeding my speed. I pull my air brake out, and I start turning in pretty hard, and I see him right here and get the off-bore HMS PL-12 on him. I'm going to crank his missiles downwards, start chaffing. I know I beat his missiles, and boom, just like that, he failed to beat mine, and that's all she wrote. What makes this plane special is the fact that it is really nothing special, like I said, and I keep saying it's just good enough at everything. You kind of have to work a little harder than you would with other planes, but when you get that kill and you outplay somebody or you play the plane to its advantage or whatever, right? It feels so much better when you finally, you know, get that kill. You get like a, you know, a high off-bore Micah shot in a dogfight with a Rafale, right? You don't, I mean, you get the kill, right? It's to be expected. You're flying a Rafale with Micahs, right? Or you're flying around at contrails at Mach 2 in a F-15E or a Eurofighter. You know what I mean? You get that top-down AIM-120 kill, and like, yeah, of course you're going to, right? You're in the best BVR planes in the game. So with this plane, it's just, it feels so much better to fly because it's so much more rewarding, because you're not flying some just ridiculously broken plane. It's perfectly well-rounded, and it's just an absolute joy to fly. I really love this plane. Again, like I said earlier, it is currently my favorite plane in the game for top tier. I would rather fly this plane really than any other plane. I haven't touched the Rafale in months. It's just too good. It's just too easy to fly. And I mean, I tried the Eurofighter earlier. Somebody was saying that, you know, its radar is having issues, and I didn't really notice anything, but what I did notice is that plane is still just so good. It's just so objectively incredibly good, even after the quote-unquote nerf with the G limiter. It still feels incredibly good. It's still very, very good and very easy to fly. And even the US planes, when I was grinding out for the F-18, the F-16C, I hadn't flown that thing in probably well over a year, and man, it's still just so good. It's still very easy to fly. And the F-15E is also kind of in that boat. This plane is just, it's just good enough. And again, I keep saying that, it's just so much fun. But anyways, that's kind of enough repeating myself about this plane. It's great. If you guys haven't looked into grinding out the Chinese tech tree, I definitely would. It's got so much potential. The J10A is great. The Mirage, right? It's a Mirage. Of course, it's going to be good. It gets Micahs. The J11B, the GOAT of this update. If you guys are looking for a good country to grind out, I would recommend you look at China. It's just so much fun. But yeah, that's enough talking about this plane. If you guys like the video, please be sure, you know, like and subscribe. Leave a comment on your thoughts on the plane below. It really helps out. We are actually getting pretty close to 1,000 subs. We're growing pretty quick. And what we're going to be doing is a tournament for 1,000 sub special video. The way you sign up for that, is going to be in the Discord when we get there. There's going to be more details there. It's going to be, like I said, a 2v2 tournament with around 32 players is what I'm going to be shooting for. And the winners, the two winners, right, because it's 2v2s, each will be getting a $25 Steam gift card or a PlayStation Network or Xbox, whatever you play on that platform. It'll be $25 gift card to each of the winners. But yeah, that's all I got for today and for this video. I hope to see you guys out there. And if you see me flying the J11B, just know I am having the time of my life. All right, peace.